Okay, Ed, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Very great to be coming down.
Roger, bottom step.
The last one is a long one. Ascent check, very easy to do. Little push and just spring right up.
Good afternoon. Today we've got two very special guests, two very good friends of mine who have agreed to join us here for this hour. And I knew both of these guys from the Navy and from the astronaut office. We worked together for years. The first that I want to introduce is Captain Wendy Lawrence. Wendy was a member of the class of '81 from the Naval Academy. The second class that included women, got her master's from MIT and Woods Hole. And she is the first woman Naval Academy graduate to fly in space, has 4 space shuttle missions. And the first one of those, she was a rookie on my 3rd flight and served as the mission specialist number 2, which is the flight engineer. And her main job was to keep me from screwing things up. And she pulled that off beautifully. So Wendy, thanks for being with us today. The second person I'm going to introduce is Bill Reedy. I've known him for years. He was a year behind me in the class of '74 out of the Naval Academy. Reeds flew A6s in the Navy and was in the class of '87 at the Naval Academy. And we flew together on our first flight in space. Reed's flying that time as in the same role that Wendy flew on her first flight as the flight engineer, MS2. And then he flew as a pilot and flew his 3rd flight as a commander. Reeds was a senior manager at NASA headquarters. He succeeded his boss and became the associate administrator for spaceflight. So he had purview over the space shuttle program, the International Space Station program, the communications programs that NASA has, and the expendable launch vehicles. So I'm going to hand it over to these two folks. Wendy, over to you.
Thanks, Oz, and thanks for the opportunity to be part of this. By the time we finally strapped on board Endeavour to blast off on STS-67, that had been a 25-year journey of trying to make a childhood dream come true. And that dream started with Apollo 11. In July of 1969, I had just turned 10 years old, and like millions of people around the world, I sat down in front of a black and white television at home, because that's all we had. And I was enthralled, mesmerized by watching Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin take those first steps. And that's the day my dream began. I remember thinking to myself, looks like a pretty fun job. I think I might want to do that when I get a little bit older. And certainly we were paying attention to Apollo 14, because after the Apollo 13 mission, everybody wanted to see whether or not the Apollo 14 mission was going to be successful. I was back in front of that black and white television again, watching them set down the lunar lander and the Frau Marl Highlands. And again, an amazing opportunity to watch people kind of bounce and shuffle along the surface of the moon. And I knew going to the Naval Academy was a great step to take, and that also would allow me to follow family tradition, as my mom's dad went there and my dad went there. So unlike Oz and Reed's, being a woman in the Navy, by the time I graduated, still not a lot of opportunities in the world of naval aviation. Flying jets really wasn't an option. So I decided that I was going to fly helicopters, because personally, I think it's a lot of fun to be able to fly sideways and backwards and do many, many different things with a helicopter and have a wide variety of missions. But that meant for me that if I really wanted to be an astronaut in that time frame, it was the shuttle program. I needed to go off and get that master's degree. I had opted to study ocean engineering, and I think that really helped make a difference in terms of having a competitive application when it came time to finally throw in my hat and say, I think I'm ready to see if I can become an astronaut and have my opportunity to fly in space. So it's an amazing opportunity, as you can imagine, to have your childhood dream come true. Launch was amazing. There's nothing in the world that simulates 6.5 million pounds of thrust. It is quite a spectacular and dramatic ride. And it's over too quickly, in my humble opinion. 8.5 minutes, yeah, great. It could have gone on longer, but it is what it is. The engine's cut off. You instantly are able to float. You realize you're up in space. You're still pretty busy, lots of checklist things to do. And we finally got to a point where we could take a breath, unstrap, and Oz grabbed my helmet ring and he threw my face up into his window and said, "Look, take a look down at planet Earth. You're here." That was the aha moment for me. It was like, oh my gosh, she's right. I am here. I am in space. I'm looking out the window of my spacecraft, looking down at my home planet. And I finally have made it. 25 years, lots of up and downs, lots of times when honestly I didn't think I could make it happen. But I'm here. I am living my dream. It's far better than I thought it could be. And I really just wanted to float in front of that window for a few minutes longer. Then Oz came back and grabbed my helmet ring again and said, "Now go back to work," and threw me down to the middeck so I could pick up the timeline again. But I owe so much to all those Apollo crews. I mean, they really showed us what is possible when we're willing to take on the challenges. They had many obstacles to overcome. When you think about how rudimentary computing power still was back then, the fact that they were still using something called a slide rule to do their calculations, it was amazing to me that they were able to pull off a feat of sending humans to another celestial object, landing them there safely and bringing them back to Earth. And that certainly set a high bar for those of us who followed in the shuttle program. But they'd shown us how to blaze that trail. In many ways, it was humbling to be able to follow in their footsteps and hopefully blaze a trail for others who may want to follow in my footsteps one day.
Hey, Wendy, I got a question for you here. Being a woman in a still male-dominated sector, what advice would you give girls and young women considering maybe following in your footsteps?
Well, I will admit that it is not easy to be in a situation where you look around and you don't see a lot of people who look like you. I think Sally Ride was exactly right when she said you can't be what you can't see. So you've got to find a source of motivation for you. So yeah, as a young kid, I didn't see anybody in space who looked like me, but I was literally possessed by a dream. And that dream propelled me. It pushed me forward and it pushed me through those really rough patches. I would say in particular, like, don't allow people to deter you from your dream. Yes, you're going to have people in your life who come up to you and say, "Oh, I don't think you're going to be good enough to do that." Sometimes you just have to decide, I'm not going to listen to you. This is what I really, really want to do, and I'm going to try. So the advice I would give to you is you owe it to yourself to try, because you never are going to know if you were going to be able to make this come true unless you take those first few steps and head down that path. And you may not be good at it at first, and it may not be comfortable, but you need to keep moving forward. Also remember, there's no reason you have to do it all on your own. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. One of the most gratifying things, I think, as an astronaut on their first flight is the opportunity to invite people to that launch. And for me, it was an opportunity to look at all these people in my life who would help me get to exactly where I wanted to be. And I couldn't think of a better way to thank them than to invite them to that launch and give them an opportunity to share that moment where my dream was going to come true. That was my way, again, to say thank you. So you are surrounded by people who want to help you. Reach out to them. Trust me, they want to help you succeed. They will walk alongside you. They will pick you up when you're a little low. So dream your dream and follow it up with a lot of hard work. But trust me, when you get to where you want to be, it is an amazing moment in your life. And there are few other situations in life that are going to be as rewarding and as enjoyable for you.
As someone in grammar school and then high school and everything, I was able to watch the Apollo program and actually the tail end of Gemini and even a couple of the Mercury flights, including I remember being in fourth grade when they put on the PA system the radio from John Glenn's flight, the first American to orbit the Earth. And then in high school, as Wendy described, Apollo 11 happened, the first landing on the moon. In the basement, I had moon maps and was tuned in to the black and white TV every single mission, including the landing on the moon in 1969, after which, I went away to the Naval Academy, and I was there as a number of the Apollo missions were unfolding. But what was interesting is while I was at the Naval Academy, plebe year, that's your freshman year, somebody asked me what I wanted to do, and I said I wanted to be an astronaut. And there was a lot of kind of laughing in the background and everything else. And one of the upperclassmen came up and says, "You want to do what?" And I said, "Well, I want to be an astronaut." As it turned out, because I had said that, there was a trip in January of 1971 where they put us on an old Navy transport airplane and flew us to Patrick Air Force Base near the Kennedy Space Center. And we watched Apollo 14 take off. I just remember the liftoff was so majestic. I mean, it was just extraordinary. And there you are. And it physically shook you. It was so loud and impressive, but it was just a remarkable sight and feeling to have been there. And then fast forward to the Apollo-Soyuz program in 1975, which basically ended the Apollo program. And so at that point, I thought, my chances of ever being an astronaut were one that just was not ever going to pan out. But shortly thereafter, they started working on the space shuttle program, and timing turned out to be just right for that. Timing also turned out to be just right to meet Stu Rusa over in Russia. And he came over to do a speaking engagement in the summer of 1994. And my wife, Colleen, and I had a chance to spend quite a bit of time with them while they were over there. And then much later on, it was actually in Arlington National Cemetery where I planted one of his moon trees in 2005.
So Reeds, question for you. What does it feel like to be in a space shuttle while it's launching? Is it loud or painful? And is it really shaky?
Well, it certainly is loud, and it certainly is shaky for the first 2 minutes at least. You're almost yelling at each other back and forth, even though you've got your space helmet on and you're talking over the intercom system. I mean, it's very, very loud, and it really is shaking you. And that's for 2 minutes. And that's while those huge solid rocket boosters are firing. But when they've expended all their fuel, you're up above so much of the atmosphere, and the main engines run so quietly that you can raise your visor and you can talk almost in a normal tone of voice in the cockpit, but you're still subject to this kind of relentless acceleration. The acceleration, of course, is pushing you back in your seat, but it's also making your spacesuit and your chest and everything else weigh more, 3 times more what it would here on the Earth's surface. And so we don't really think much about breathing here on the Earth. You take in a breath. Well, really, that starts with your chest expanding, and then you actually suck in that breath. Well, it's an awful lot tougher to expand your chest when there's a gorilla sitting on it. And that's kind of what it feels like prior to getting to orbit. But you immediately go from 3 Gs to 0. You get tossed forward in your seat, and then everything starts floating. Your arms float, your checklists float on their tethers. You're euphoric.
4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour on a voyage to view the universe.